Go to that shot.
Hello. Yeah, well, we're on the two shot. We're here. Hello,
We're here.
everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Evan Abrams. We are here as usual with Kyle Hamrick on the Motion Design Hotline. Welcome, welcome. We're here to answer your technical questions about After Effects, about motion design, all kinds of fun stuff, and really just dive into the work as a sweet, sweet vacation from the universe. Kyle, that's kind of our coping mechanism for our lives. So let's continue that trend. Hey, how you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. Better than last week,
Yeah,
Getting a little more focused.
Yeah, we're getting into a new normal. We're getting into a groove, which is great. We got some awesome people up in the chat today. Mm-hmm. Clark Kent is back. We got Roland. Hey, buddy. Bringing it in. Oh, yeah, Mark's up in the mix. Oh, Bear Studios, Sam Cat is here. Oh, my boy. So good. Bear Studios, Sam Cat, is that promo thing you were doing still going on? Is that still a thing? I don't know. We'll find out. But Sam at Bear Studios makes some great plugins. Mm-hmm. But Kyle, we're not here to talk just about plugins today. We got a question. People are using the forum.
They are.
And the forum is where we like to take our questions that we get into at the beginning of the show so that Kyle and I don't just stare at each other for a long period of silence. But, what would be great is if you use the link in the description that talks about the forum. And
which I just dropped in the chat as well.
Yeah. Don't click it right now. It'll take you away from the stream. But... and Zedsalt is asking, what is in the bottle? What's in the bottle is H2O, the greatest thing you can drink to keep yourself happy. And so, yeah, it works pretty darn well. Actually, this used to be a buddy of mine. His father-in-law owns a distillery, so we ended up with a lot of this stuff. And I since quit drinking, so that's where we're at today. But yeah, we're ready to get into it, Kyle. Our question from the forum, which, you know what? Do you have it in front of you? Because I did.
Oh, I so do.
Okay, maybe you can read it.
I absolutely will. And just in case there's any confusion, while we're on, bring us those questions in the chat, so we'll hop on them right away. But if you have something that's maybe a little more in-depth question that you want us to spend, 15 minutes on, that's exactly what the forum is for. Send us project files if you want help figuring something out, as long as it's a relevant thing. Okay, so the one we're touching today from Strudlesoup, which I'm pretty sure is this person's given name. Hey, Evan and Kyle, love your hotline every time. Of course. End of question. I think we're done with the show here.
Kyle, that's how we want every question to start.
Do you have any tips on putting subtitles in a 3 to 5 minute piece with always the same in and out in animation in AE, not by hand, the lazy way, smiley face?
That's right. Awesome. Oh, and we're seeing so many awesome people jump in. We got people from Slovenia. We got people from Netherlands. We got people from Mexico. I'm a real pretentious guy, so I try to pronounce all the places as we do. We got Finland and Kyle. We have exotic arm prior up in the house tonight. So arm prior is near Ottawa here. So Scott McMahon, welcome to the party. So good to have people in here. So yeah, we're talking about text. We're talking about spicing up those subtitles. Before we get into the screen, I think we need to talk about subtitles in general. Mm-hmm. Just let's put the tiger on the table and yell at it, as we say.
I think there's a couple different ways to interpret this, but right.
Right. So when I first read it, I was like, oh, he must mean like subtitles have got to be fancier, right? Because if you're doing a motion design piece, why not have bespoke subtitles as well, right? And we're meaning things we're going to make in After Effects. So subtitles are usually done using an open or closed caption system. For example, we don't do it on this stream, but a lot of the videos on the EC Abrams channel have closed captioning. They have subtitles on there. And we do that using an SRT file that you then upload, and then whatever player can add them on as a layer that people can enable, disable, and depending on the platform can make larger, smaller, black background outline text, whatever, right? So that's just using a data file to then, run those things on a player. But I always get them confused and I have to Google it. One of them is open captions and one of them is closed captions. One of them is baked on, the other one is not. So we're talking about the baked in, the ones you render, and because you can make those a little bit spicier. You can spice that up. So usually, though, subtitles are not spicy. We don't do that because we're talking about two key things with subtitles. We're putting them on for readability and accessibility, right? This is either for a language situation, or it is because we want people who are perhaps hearing impaired to be able to actually understand the content, or sometimes it's simply a utility thing, right? Like if this is going to be put on Instagram, if someone's going to watch this on mobile, they probably have the sound off. So you still want them to get the message, so you're going to put the text on the screen. So those are kind of the reasons that we do subtitles, and all of those speak to their banality. The reason they're fairly banal is because we don't want to take away from whatever else is happening. They should be unobtrusive. They should be really easy to read. They should come and go without dragging your eye to the bottom of the screen all the time, or the top of the screen, or wherever you're putting them, because they're not the star of the show. They're just there to quickly read and absorb in your peripheral vision and then continue on with the show. So you know what? This is why I like having Roland on the stream, because he has got the stats. Roland's got the stats for us, and he's bringing bringing us the numbos that we do not look up. But yeah, so many things are just watched on mute, or the phone is off, or by default on your platform it's off. So people have to self-select to hear what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna jump into my screen, though, assuming that we want to make something cool and repeatable, and something that we don't have to spend a lot of time working on, right? So, well, I mean, you can spend as much time working on it as you really want. But we're gonna jump into the old After Effects screen here, and what I've done, and you can hopefully see it on the timeline all right, is I've got these three comps, and these three comps are the three comps of my subtitles. You can imagine that the purple solid down here is maybe just a pre-comp of maybe the entire video that we've already done. This could be, video that we're subtitling later, whatever that may be. And I'm just dropping these comps down. And all of these comps are duplicates of marginally better subtitle example. And we're using the power of master properties to get this done. Master properties are what we call up using the essential graphics. It's also how we make motion graphics templates, the Mogrts. You really want to start your day eating a lot of Mogurt. You want to get those probiotics in your body. It's very important because it really just makes everything just slide easier, such as your project workflow. So if you export these as a Mogurt, you can use them in Premiere. And this is just kind of showing you how it would look if we were to apply them here in After Effects. The structure of each of these, we can just have a playthrough and enjoy what this looks like. So as you can see, hopefully the frame rate is good, that these things kind of jostle into place, and then they like wave themselves on. And it's a fun, cartoony, jovial way to make that happen. And in terms of usability, the solution I'm proposing to you is that you can grab these handles and you can make them longer and shorter. The middle part, where no animation is happening, remains exactly the same. And the start and end keep their timing preserved as well. So you can go into these, you can twirl in, you can go into these master properties that we talked about, and you can change things like the source text or the color or the background color here. All of these are changeable things that you can do to each instance. And if you want to change something about the original, that OG file, you can just double click on it, and here's the structure of what's going down. Also, if there's always sort of any questions that you have about what we're looking at, you let us know in the comments. Kyle's on the boards; he's picking them out of there and getting them into a big old document so that we can discuss this stuff in depth as we go. Should we have some Comics Sans? It's a good idea.
Always.
What font am I using in here? I'm using Azo Sans, which I really like. Kyle, you turned me on to this font.
I did. I really like Azo Sans.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's right at the beginning of the alphabet, so you don't have to scroll.
That's right. It's right after Arial. Hey, there it is. But yeah, Phil is saying things look kind of blurry. If things look blurry, This is something that's kind of new. You may have to go down to the bottom of your YouTube player and just up your playback resolution, because by default people are getting scaled down because people are really using the internet a lot these days.
The tubes are full.
All the tubes are full. So we're lucky we can carve out a bit of the tubes for us. So on here, what is the structure of what's happening? Well, I'm using a bunch of expressions here. Oh, lobster papyrus, I think so. I'm using some expressions to conform this rectangle to always be the size of this text, which we can get into more detail, but I'm just using the source rect at time, which I think now is starting to be a bit of an old hat trick to make things work. I'm also using a little expression on the anchor point of the text to force it to always be in the middle center. So that the rectangle is always in the middle center, the text is always in the middle center. If you want to know more about that, there are tutorials even on this very channel where you can enjoy the full version of that walkthrough. But in general, you can lock these down with expressions. The animation part, though, because we're here to talk about what makes this cool, and that is modifying those expressions here to make sure that the source rect at time is referencing the moment of stillness, right? So you'll notice in source rect at time, I've got a little 1 in here. That means the time that the source rect at time, this reading of how big the text layer is taking place at 1 second when the animation is resolved. So I can get wacky at the beginning and everything can still reference when things are stable, right? And that's kind of the idea with that. Now, what we're doing to animate this stuff is I've put on a series of animators using range selectors, using the ramp up shape. If you haven't used the ramp up shape, if you're more of a square, that's fine too. But I like to ramp it up, and I'm basically pushing that ramp up through on animator 1, animator 2, and then animator 3, and they're staggered, right? Their keyframes are staggered from each other. And the first one here is trying to bring stuff up from below the composition. And then the next one is tamping it down. And then the third one is bringing it back up to the baseline. So that's what's causing this cool wave to go through. Wave is I've got these 3 things here that are going through up, down, and up again, which causes this wave. But all of that resolves by 1 second. Whatever cool thing you do, make sure it resolves by a certain time. And then you can go composition, responsive design, M-time, and you can create intro and outro, which is what makes these protected regions here. And then you can resize them and move them around as you need. But that's what causes this to be responsive out here, where you can be dragging this around. The middle flexes, the in and out, they stay the same. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully that's going for folks, and it kind of works out that way. One thing that I would recommend is always consider where in the frame these are going to live. So what I've done is out here in this comp, I've parented all of the subtitle examples to a null. So if, for example, we get into like a 3-liner or something like that, but you shouldn't. If you have subtitles, you should never go beyond 2 lines. That's just good practice. Your subtitles should be up for as long as it takes to read them out loud twice. That allows for slower reading levels to process through that stuff. I don't know if that's true, but it was when we were doing broadcast stuff. And having them on this null is going to give you that kind of control that you want. But always have readability in mind. Readability over being a fancy pants. And that's what I'm going to say. And yeah, hopefully that fits together. If anyone has any follow-ups for me on that, then y'all let me know. But I think it's time that we kick it over and talk about, Kyle, what was your solution to Strudlesoup's situation? Which one is Strudel? Is Strudel the like the flat chicken, or is what am I thinking of?
Schnitzel, I think.
Oh. Well, what's Spatzel then?
Wait, maybe that. Oh, dang. You'd think I have a pretty decent amount of German heritage. You'd think I would know better about this, but I don't.
Oh, you're a Kyle Hamrick, are you? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I had you pegged as a regular old Scots mutt over there, but but you can tell by his powerful German features that Kyle is from.
Well, I mean, I think it's British and German and, general, Northern European mutt, as a lot of us are.
Well, you do have a very Bavarian appetite for beer, so that's fantastic. So what was, when you got this question, what were you thinking when you read it?
All right. So to me, I read this more of like subtitles, probably not getting like the straightforward, plain subtitles that you would use for the actual word, like subtitles in quotes. Because for a 3 to 5 minute video and doing this in After Effects, that to me kind of is interpreted more as like, hey, I'm putting titles on something, probably for social media or something, and specifically asking about it being animated made me go to like, let's talk about ways to set up text animation for things like this that make it easy and repeatable and like programmatic, so you're not having to redo stuff quite as much, right? So here's a couple solutions that I'm going to throw at you. Some of these may be more applicable to this than others, but hopefully there's some good strategies in here that can just help you work things out, right? So what do I have? So first and foremost, I just want to call out a couple of tools that might potentially be helpful for this. So there's Oren Zucker and Dan Eberts, the famous Dan Eberts that solves all of your expressions questions 15 years ago. They have a line of products. Type Monkey, I believe, was the first one, and it generates kinetic text, which is probably a little over the top for this, but I wanted to call it out because it is potentially a solution here. And then they have another product called Monkey Bars, which does kinetic text boxes. So these are very like kind of automatic things. You can enter text here and specify a lot of stuff. Since Strudlesoup specifically asked for the lazy way smiley face, I thought, things like this were a good solution to call out because if you just need to make a bunch of stuff, things like this can be exactly that. Okay. And then I also have not had a chance to try this out at all because it actually just came out, Subtitle Pro by Let's Motion. And I think it just came out. It's actually still on 20% off for a few more days here, right? Oh, till today. Good timing. And it is specifically geared towards subtitle files. So if you're actually looking for subtitles in quotes, check this out. They have a little video that explains it, and you can dive more into that. So like I said, I wanted to show you some things that I use to actually do my text animation, especially for things that need to be easy. I know a lot of you find text animators difficult, and I have explained these in a couple School of Motion tutorials. You can look those up, or we can provide those links. I wanted to show you one that I use a lot when I just need to get words on and make them easy to control. It's called Type Array by Paul Slemmer. And if you go to Paul Slemmer /tools, he's got a couple other things here, but Type Array is right here. It's pay what you want. I'd suggest, throwing the guy $10 because it's a really useful tool. So it is actually an animation preset that you can just grab right here and apply it. And then I'm going to open this, give myself a little bit space here. So what it does is it applies a pseudo effect and then an expression selector with some stuff on it. So right now we've got our position coming up on the Y and the opacity. That's just what it's set to do by default. You can add more stuff. And then it gives you one set of keyframes that applies to each chunk of your thing. Remember that text animators can be used on characters, words, or lines. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to lines here. And then let's just do a quick preview. And so you can see this one set of keyframes is applying itself to each of these lines. And then the time offset is determined by the controls up here. You get a frame delay. So let's set this to 12 frames between each thing. So see, that's nice and easy. You can, I could set it to be 48 frames if I want it. And if I want that to happen slower, I can just drag these keyframes out. So it's much easier to do chunks of text, either in words or characters or whatever. It gives you a really straightforward way to control it. There's also a little checkbox here. You can use markers. I really like doing this if I have to time something to VO or to music or lyrics or something like that. Because again, for each of these chunks, if I just drop a marker by pressing asterisk here, that will now trigger the things. It's going to ignore the frame delay, and so it'll trigger one there, there, and then there. And markers are really easy to move around, so you can time things really nicely that way if you're working within After Effects. Just to show you something else with type array here. Oh, it was the markers thing, and I already showed you that. Good job, Kyle.
Kyle, you nailed it.
I nailed it. All right. So this is just another tip that a lot of people may not be aware of because it's kind of a newer feature, that After Effects can take CSV files or JSON files. CSV is just a spreadsheet format, and you can link things up to that so that you can make things where you set it up once and then make it very procedural from there. So what I did here, I wanted to call out, in addition to type array, there's also text evo that I know a lot of people are big fans of. This is also name your own price. So look at that if you want another like fairly automatic text animation thing. Okay, so I just have a very straightforward thing that I made in a Google Sheet, which is some lorem ipsum here. And I like to use this. You can just download as a CSV right here. But of course, you could use your own whatever Office suite you like to create these. Just download it as a CSV, and then you just bring that into After Effects like any other file, and you can just drop it down here on the timeline. And what you'll see when you open this up, I'll go ahead and maximize my screen, that actually each cell, there is one very important thing. You have to give these titles so that After Effects kind of knows what it is, but you can do multiple columns and all that. And then each cell is a thing that you can actually link to. So you could put values in here. This is a good way to drive graphs and stuff. And you can also fill this with text. And then so what you could do is take an array of text layers here, like I have, and just open these up so you expose the source text. And then you could just pick whip each of these to a line of text in this document here, okay? And I'm going to just try to knock through this real quick. One thing to pay attention to is that because After Effects works with index 0, that your numbers are actually one off. The first line is 0 there. So yeah, just something to pay attention to. So now when I go back to my preview, it is updated with all of that. And you're like, wow, okay, it looks like I accidentally duped one. You get the idea. The thing is, now I can, I can fill this out with whatever I want. And now when I download this, it will update auto-magically to whatever I have typed. Wow, the end. Okay, so, oh no, get off. There we go. All right, I'm going to download this as a CSV.
Now everyone's seen your Facebook.
Oh no. Oh, man. Okay, and then I'm just going to replace the file that I had here in my folder that I had linked to.
Yeah.
And come back to After Effects and poof,
boom.
There it is. So that's a really great way. If you have something, obviously these could all be animated, stylized, however you want. But if you have something that you're going to kind of make one project and just be constantly updating that script, this is a really great way to do it.
Yeah.
And any kind of values, numbers, anything like that can be stored like this and updated. If you're driving this with JSON that comes from a website that updates every 5 minutes, you could then be feeding that directly to an After Effects project that's just sitting here like listening to this, right?
Yeah. And then waiting on like a watch folder and like, ooh, time to do the thing. That's a little more scripting.
There's Data Clay makes some products called Templater that do exactly this, and they can, depending on how far you want to go, this can literally be set up to have a machine that sits there and just listens for this and then spits out a new version every time. Some of the big social media platforms do exactly this with those customized videos that they make for you, or a version of this.
Yeah, solid. It's a solid way to make that capital C content. Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Man.
So here's just one more idea that you could do for something like this. You can see, nothing too exciting here. I just did kind of some basic animation to show you what's going on. But so for the source text here, I want to drive this. This is that exact same CSV. I want to drive this in a way so that I can customize it quickly. So if you sort of think about the way that After Effects thinks, you can do some clever stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this composition that I'm in here to line 0. Okay. And then I'm going to link my source text to line 0. Open this up, and you can see expressions are just like kind of a little map here. It says this comp, layer, yep, that's CSV, data, outline, line 0. So since I'm being clever here, instead of that line 0, I'm going to tell it to take this comp dot name. And now it is looking at the exact same place, but I just made this dynamic. So if I were to come up here and make duplicates of this, line 5 is looking at line 5. Line 8 is looking at line 8 because I kind of tricked it into doing that. So, you may or may not be able to think of instances where this is useful. But if you have a little bit of expressions knowledge, you can do some really interesting stuff by just directing where it's looking by kind of using this as a variable. Let's see. I have one more little Mogrt thing that I wanted to show here.
Yeah, what else? What else you got going on here?
All right. Yeah, you're like, that's boring, Kyle. Let's see this.
These people have heard enough.
So Evan kind of talked about Mogrts a little bit. I was just going to build a simple one real quick here, just so you can kind of make sure everyone has an understanding of what's going on there. So I have a text layer. It's that same thing here. I just broke it into 3 lines. My animator is based on lines, so it's animating each of these like one at a time. So I'm just going to take this source text property and push this up into the essential graphics panel. And now that source text is a changeable thing, either as a master property here in After Effects, or if I push this to Premiere. And in case you didn't know this, you can actually make the font selection and size, faux styles, and stuff like that. You can make those accessible to your user within Premiere. So that can be really cool. And you cannot control keyframes once you push this into Premiere, but you could change things like color or things like that. You could maybe even change, other aspects of this. For now, I'm just going to keep it really simple. And I'm going to call this underscore my text, just real basic, right? I'm going to go ahead and save my project, and let's export this to local. Yep. Okay, great. And then I'm going to open this over in Premiere, which should have it in just a second here. There we go.
Yay!
See how it updated already? I can just drag this down to my timeline, and there's my thing. It's got all its animation. And then within the Essential Graphics panel, you've now got editing right here. So in the second, and one more. So I can update all that text, and it keeps all my animation exactly as I built it. And obviously, Evan showed you that you can do some of the time-protected regions here, so you can combine that with this. That will recognize it. And you can even adjust the text look in here if you want to. Really cool. Just wanted to show you one more strategy that I have done several times when I needed to do something like this. Making like bullet point lists that need to come into Premiere and be a little more controllable. It's a little hard to time things out. So here's a composition that I built, and you can see each of these is its own line, and then they all have the same keyframes, and they're just happening when they're happening. And here in After Effects, you can drag the layer around, and that's great, but if you're pushing this as a Mogrt, that doesn't really work. So let me share this idea. I'm actually going to get rid of the keyframes on both of these second and third lines here. And what I'm going to do is pick whip, the property pick whip, up to that other offset property. Okay. And then I have put a slider on this, which you can just get slider control under expression control, slider control. You just add it to your layer. And I called it offset, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a line before this called variable delay equals, and then pick whip to my little offset slider, semicolon. And then I'm going to add this really magical little expression function called value at time right here. And then within these parentheses, I'm going to write time minus delay. And that's that variable that we set up, okay? So now, this is looking at those keyframes offset by however many frames we put here. Let's put 24. And now that second line is going to do whatever the first one did. I'm sorry, this is seconds right now because of the way I built it.
Boo.
So it's offset by 2 seconds. Ding, and then it happens. I'm going to go ahead and copy this to both of these to this third layer. So you'll see lines 2 and 3 will happen at the same time now because they have the same amount of delay. Okay. But what we're going to do, let's, real quick, open this up in Essential Graphics. And then let's use our search bar to get the source text from each of these. 1, 2, 3. Probably want to label these. 1, 2, 3. And then we also need those slider controls so that we can access that offset. Okay. I'm going to put this here. Let's call that to offset. And
now that's the movie Too Offset, Too Furious, right?
Yeah, obviously. Okay. Let's see.
Too offset, too delay.
You might need to edit this range depending on how big you want things to be. And then I'm going to call this delayed. Okay. Save my project, and then I'll export this. And so what I'm doing is, while you can't keyframe things in Premiere, you can. There's my delayed. I made this one nice and long too, by the way. Mm-hmm. You can make it so that you can have these variables that you can change within Premiere, okay? So not only can I change the text here, but I can change how far offset they are. So we're going to change the second one to be offset by 3 seconds, and this one to be offset by 16 seconds, 15 seconds. So that makes it very controllable here in Premiere. And this is, I do this a lot if I'm like making bullet points along with a tutorial that I'm creating or something like that. It makes it a lot easier to kind of align these things, but still keep it all in one file.
Woo!
Just one last thing, in case that all kind of went over your head. It's a little different, but there is another tool called Comps from Spreadsheet that can kind of help build some of this stuff out. This is for things that are still being worked on within After Effects, but might be useful if you're needing to kind of automate building out text. So just another tool to look at. Whew, that's it from me.
You did it, baby. Take a load off, Kyle. You nailed it.
There you go.
Whew. And we are at the halfway point here. So this is where we usually pivot into doing taking those live questions. I did want to touch on a couple things, but first, because I see Haley from Motion Hatch hanging out in the stream with us. For those of you who don't know, Motion Hatch is a podcast, is a community that kind of focuses more on the business end of design and the business end of things. Kyle and I are much more technical nerds up in here. That's where we shine. So if you want to learn more about the business end of creativity, then you should definitely check out Motion Hatch. And in particular, they have a mastermind program that's starting up their spring session coming up. It's like an 8-week creative incubator thing where you or maybe the way to think about it is like what was I thinking the other day? It's like group therapy for your creative career, where there will be a moderator and an expert in there to help you through and to provide guidance and stuff. So if that's the kind of thing that you're looking to fill your time with, definitely check out Motion Hatch Mastermind program for that. So Haley, if you're hanging out in the chat, you should drop the link in there so that people can get there and learn more about that. But Kyle, you and I, we've been getting a lot of questions. We got some queues building up in the queue.
Love them queues.
One of them that I wanted to jump on real quick though, Joel was asking a bit more about the extra sort of formatting and styling bits of expression, because I think those have been opened up, right? So we can touch those a little bit more with expressions, or we can reference and change them. I don't get down with that too much myself, because the way I usually interface with that in a Mogrt is that I just click the little box that lets other people change the font size and
yeah, but
like
see, the issue there is that it opens it up to all the fonts that are on their machine.
Yeah.
And so if you are building this for a thing that needs to remain brand compliant, you might actually have 3 fonts that you want them to be able to choose from.
Yeah. Which, that lends itself more to using the the brand new drop down effect. Right. I love that drop down, Kyle. I can't say how much I really enjoy that kind of thing, because it's so invisible to the user, right? That they're like, oh, just change this, and then the whole thing can change on the back end, right? Yep. Which is fantastic to make happen. But yeah, it's also great to see, like, we don't usually have such an active chat going on, which I love to see today, that people are like asking questions, and then other people are like jumping on and getting those things answered in the chat, these little things that can help people along. I love to see that kind of like, I don't know. It's like a community, right? Like you would see kind of like, we got like 60, 70 people hanging out in here with us. So it is kind of like a large classroom of people. So it's a lot of, it's pretty great.
I wish we could actually keep up with all of them while we were demoing and talking and all that.
Well, Kyle, that's why we're tag teaming it on the old Millinote board. So we've got some cues filling up in there, and let's see. I don't know. Are there any that are jumping out? I see your screen. You're preparing some kind of a thing over there.
I was preparing one. Just I thought it would be a fairly quick answer, so thought I would go for it here.
Okay. What do you got? What was the question that you wanted to tackle here? Is this
okay? So this question was from. It's a little different than what we've been talking about, but maybe that's good. Yusuf was asking. He has a problem whenever he takes a project from Illustrator to After Effects, it comes in pixelated.
Right.
So hopefully this is an easy one to answer. So I thought I would do that.
Now, Kyle, I'd like you to also explain what you've drawn. And people in the chat, what do you interpret Kyle's Pictionary to be? You let me know. And that's what it will canonically have.
Perfect. I'll tell you what I did. I intentionally chose a few things that would have some jaggy edges if you don't work with them properly.
Boom. Yeah. Anytime there's like shear, right? Like you're going, the rise run thing. Anytime there's a curve, you're going to be testing your anti-aliasing powers.
So I did build this fairly large. First and foremost, if you are making a new file, you probably want to build it. There are film and video sizes that you can do. Personally, I actually gave myself a version of the web large that's 1920 by 1080, but I don't like all of the extra guides that the film and video ones put on there. They're just a little too annoying.
Samesies, buddy. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So I'm just making some stuff. One thing, though, you do want to make sure that you make this big enough. Like, yes, you can bring in Illustrator documents and scale them infinitely, but you don't want to create a thing that's actually this big. Because remember, in Illustrator, you can zoom in all the way in, and you could be working at 1200% scale, and it really is fine in here. It doesn't matter. But you bring in this into After Effects, and it's going to be that big, and then you have to scale the thing to 1000% scale to work with it, and it's just messy. So don't do that. Start it at a good size, and you'll be much happier. So one thing you do want to be aware of is very thin lines. You probably want to have a minimum of 2 to 3 pixels on anything that you're, designing there, and you also want to make sure that you're working RGB, because Illustrator is, often used for CMYK, but you want to make sure you're working RGB. You can have your...
Now, Kyle, print is dead, and Instagram's the box we're going to bury it in.
I mean, maybe now. So you do want to make sure under File, your document color mode is set to RGB. And then if you are inheriting this from somebody else, you can also go to Edit Colors. Where is it? Convert to RGB. Just to make sure. You'd have to select everything, but
yeah,
good practice.
I mean, and while you're in there, just to say that, like, if you just change the document's color mode, Sometimes oopsies occur.
Yeah.
You want to be converting, and if possible, get the hex values.
Yeah.
And
Make sure that it's all accurate.
Yeah, double check it, triple check it. Do not leave it up to chance.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so in theory, that shouldn't have any bearing on the like jagginess, but yet another problem that you want to kind of make sure you avoid.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to bring that document over into my After Effects here. And I actually have this set so that it automatically turns layered documents into compositions, even though this is just one layer. I'll just put this in its own comp, even though it's the same thing.
Right.
So you can see what's going on here.
Yeah, so the trouble that Yusuf was having is that it's coming in pixelated.
Uh-huh.
So right now, looks pretty fine to me. You know,
it does.
Looks like no trubs.
Looks like no troubles. Of course, if I zoom way in here, it's like, oh, it's pixelated, but that's because I'm at, a zoomed up scale.
Right.
And just to point that out, like if you are used to working in Illustrator and you come over here, like in Illustrator, you can do this all day, right? And everything looks perfect.
Ooh,
After Effects does not work that way. It works with pixels. So just be aware that if your zoom level is higher than 100, you're going to see chunkiness because they're just pixels.
Right.
So
and that's one of the most common things that goes down. So
just want to make sure that was not an issue. The other thing, so After Effects will take these and make them. You'll get all that vectory goodness, but you have to do something first. Like I can scale this up to 1,000% here, and here it's all soft and jaggy. What you have to do is check this little sun button right here. It's called continuous rasterization. And it's kind of confusing because when you use this with pre-comps, it actually has a different feature as well, which works differently and thus is confusing. But this will mean After Effects is continuously rasterizing this so that you get that vectory goodness. Ding, nice and smooth.
Hopefully people can see that on the stream resolution.
Yeah.
I just realized.
Right. So, in theory, that should be the simple answer to your question.
Right.
If you feel like you're doing all those things and you're still getting the issue, let us know. There are some other things that you might want to think about. Some of this, too, is just like certain color combinations. I kind of did this on purpose. Highly saturated colors on top of each other are going to get a little kind of buzzy sometimes.
Right.
So, bright red in particular over another saturated color, like there's just some limits to the way video works, and you're going to run into that a little bit. So just be aware of that as well. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, and if not, Yusuf, you let us know in the chat if doing those things is still troubling. One area where I see happen as well is if you make a camera and you make that 3D, we start injecting another level of wildness in here that when people move the camera close to it, it no longer seems good, right? And that sometimes it's down to depth of field, right? Because now we're introducing that variable into it. At the end of the day, though, we really want to be trying to work with very large things when you can. So scale them up outside the app, bring them in. You'll be much happier. There are very few times where you're like, I don't know. My first animating happened in Macromedia Flash, right? So I was really used to I can just infinitely scale this up, whatever. And because that's vector based, it's SVG based. The export is going to be an SWF file, etc. So, just remember we're in Pixel Town now. You're in Pixel Town, baby.
It's a one-way trip.
Yeah.
Not really, actually. If you have Overlord, it can be both directions.
Right. Overlord goes both ways. That's what it says on the tin. So what else we got? What else we got going on?
I know this is a little more recent, but I see Brian asking a question that I think is relevant to the tech stuff we were talking about.
Germane, yes.
And there is some discussion going on. Obviously, I'm just catching up because I was demoing. But so Brian was asking basically if you are using some of these essential graphics strategies that we were using, specifically if you're using them for master properties. If you have an expression on one of these properties and then you feed that property to a master property thing, if you then change that as a master property, you're going to be kind of overwriting what you have in there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if just me talking about it is going to make sense enough. I don't think it's not something I feel like I could just dive into a demo without building something first. But you need to kind of think about it like if there's a way that you can control something with an expression and then have it affected by an expression control or added to by something else, and that something else is what you're changing with the master property, that's kind of a better strategy. Or just add that expression to the thing as a master property and not within the pre-comp. Does that make any sense? It made sense in my brain, but I feel like it's confusing.
Well, I think it might be like if you're reading, let's say you type out an expression into the source text, right?
Yeah.
Source text equals this string. Now we're going to get real JavaScript-y up in here.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about this idea of strings. Like if you type out something in the expression, is it a string? Is it a command? What is it? And so that JavaScript function of convert to string might be something you want to look into. Or converting back and forth between, is this a text you would display or is this a command you would follow? So that's, now that we're in JavaScript town, I mean, we talked about Pixel Town, but right next to it is JavaScript village. Kyle, I'm so excited to play Animal Crossing later today.
Clearly.
You know what? I won't drag
get your little conductor hat for next week.
Oh, man. Look, I'm not going to drag us down into that hole on this program, as we have had many digressions in our lives. But let's jump into some more questiones that are hanging out in here. What do we got? We got how to do. I like this one about snapping. There's a question in here that we did not attribute to a person.
Like this?
Bam. You call snaps. So there's a question was snapping for stuff within shape layers. Example, those tiny secondary anchor points. So let me jump on over to Evan's screen.
Jump
to the screen. And so we're going to do a little snapping. And so, yeah, if we were to say, let's make a circle. Let's make an ellipsoid here. Whoop, like this. So we got a stroke on there. What are we going to snap to, right? If we start, so we got this one thing over here. Let's make another one so that I can play around and snap it to things. Whoop. And it doesn't need a stroke, but let's give it a nice fill here. Boop, like this. And if I'm moving something around, right, you hold down Control, or in my case, Command, because that's how I do it. I'm a big old Mac boy. And you can see that it starts trying to snap to things. And if we zoom in here, you can see the feature I'm near becomes the thing I'm about to snap to, right? And what then will this snap to? Well, it's trying to snap to the bounding box of the other layer. It's trying to do that. And it is trying to snap to the midpoints of the other box. It's trying to do that. That's pretty cool. It tries to snap to the center. And this is a parametric path. So it doesn't have any path information in here. It's a circle that is defined by a size and a location. I'm going to convert it to a Bezier path, and this path now has path points. And I'm going to just drag these points around, get them real nasty like. My attitude is much improved this week. I'm having a much wackier time. So now when I go to snap, check this out. You can snap and it kind of like rides the rail here. Woo! 1,000 points. Tony Hawk. Right? So it snaps to this line because that line is now a Bezier path. And it'll also try to hit some of the points. So let's try to go in here and look. We can assume there's going to be a point up here. Let's see if we can get a little snap to go down on that. Oh, wait. Is it up? Did I put the point up on the apex again? Ah, dang it. I got to stop doing that. Let's make sure that this point is not on one of those other locations that something would snap to try to demonstrate. I'll just start adding more points. Maybe this will help us out. So we got this, holding down Ctrl, and you'll notice that it's not catching, right? It's like, oh, there's nothing to catch. Oh, there we go. Now we caught one. So it will find those point locations as you roll over them. Just remember that it's got to be a path. So hopefully that... I don't know who asked the question, but if we didn't get to that question, if that was an unsatisfying answer, hopefully it was, and that'll get you through. Just remember that if there are no points, if there is no path for it to grab a hold of, it can't grab a hold of that. Vector information is fair game. There isn't a lot in a pixel layer for it to grab a hold of, so you'll probably have difficulty with that. But on vectors, you should be good. And hopefully that is handy. Boom. I feel like I nailed it. I don't. I feel very self-assured in that answer. But I could.
Good.
But I could.
As long as you're satisfied, that's really all that matters.
Self. I nailed it. All right, Kyle. Which one do you want to get into?
I did want to call out again. I'm like trying to stay up with the chat here.
Yeah.
We are getting a couple of very specific questions about working with some of this text stuff. And especially working with text in terms of master properties and all that. Some of that stuff does get very specific. And, I think my answer from a minute ago still is maybe confusing. But maybe the best generic answer I can give is think about where you're doing the thing. And that may be what's causing you problems. If you're trying to do something within the pre-comp and feeding that out as a master property and it's breaking when you're trying to update things, think about pulling that out and doing it, out here on the master property instead of within the pre-comp. Just try using it in the other place and see if that's the solution. Again, I know that's kind of vague, but I've seen Roland answering a lot of these questions in here. And I know Roland is very smart with a lot of these text templates and stuff like that. Roland, if you want to drop your URL in here again. I know he has a lot of projects that might be helpful for people that are kind of exploring this.
Right.
So that'd be a good resource to throw out.
Well, the other thing I would say is also like, I mean, Roland, if you're open for it, let people know where they can find you on Twitter if they want to tweet further questions at you as well. And Roland's a chill hang on Twitter or wherever you prefer people to kind of get at you with this stuff, because we want to look. Kyle and I have some answers. We don't have all the answers. But
a lot of the answers just aren't good things to do off the cuff.
Right. Or I don't know. This is something that I talk about, like, when you and I are like starting meetups and stuff like that, that it's really critical that we encourage people to kind of lean on each other and to be the community that we want to see in the world, so to make sure that we are accessible to each other for that kind of thing. But yeah, let's stick our head back in the technical bin, though, Kyle.
Okay.
Let's just dig that hole and stick our head in it. What do we got here?
I see a question from Akshay that seems like again, it's probably one to just kind of talk through, but it might be helpful to just kind of throw out some ideas on this one.
Oh, this idea. We do this in our. This is actually in the file, like for what we do for the intro of this show, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah, like I don't have that in front of me right now, but this idea that they were asking, what is it? How to do the similar text animation Mogrt with dynamic text background, stretching and shrinking according to the length and number of lines. Mm-hmm. So I guess this idea that there's two things to consider, right? As I'm typing the text, does the box get bigger or does the text conform to the size of the box? Mm-hmm. I think that's the idea, that we want the text to be dynamic or that the background is dynamic. If you want the background to be dynamic, it's source rect at time, tutorials on that, blah, 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 link description, etc. Mm-hmm. We pontificate about that nonstop. And, if you don't like my tutorial about it, check out Jake in Motion, check out Workbench, all the spaces where you can get that. But the other way, doing it the other way is really interesting. So, Kyle, if you've got it in front of you, let's.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain one quick difference. I know we're coming up to the end of the show here, but just to, again, like sometimes it's those simple things that trip people up. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of make sure that we were on the same page here. When you're using the text tool, I assume my screen's up here?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
If you just click, then you are writing what's called point text, and you can manually make your line breaks. But if you do this long enough, you'll eventually go off the edge of the screen. Whee! Because this text is unbounded. It's based on just a single point where you created it, okay? But the other option is to drag, using your text tool is to drag a box, and now you're making what's called paragraph text. And this now has bounds. And so if I fill this up with stuff, I'm just going to copy paste this so I have a bunch of it. Did that have... There we go. I was like, I manually put line breaks in here and sabotage myself.
Smooth move.
Yeah, great job, Kyle. And so now you can not only edit the text, but you can also edit this bounding box. There's some things to understand, though. This bounding box, at least currently, is not accessible to expressions in any way.
So we couldn't dynamically change the size.
I believe scripting can access this, but you can't run scripts from Premiere like via Mogrts. So it's one of those things you have to, a lot of times you need to kind of figure out what your boundaries are and how to work within those with the tools that you have. There are ways, it gets very expression-y. There are ways to force line breaks in point text. And it's actually not too bad. I'll see if maybe that's a good like quick demo for a future week or something.
Yeah.
But you could set up a template very simple, very similar to like what I did earlier here, where you could have multiple lines, but then in Premiere they could actually just activate a special character or something like that, and it forces a line break. So you can create some flexibility there if you need to. It kind of depends on exactly what you're doing and where you're using it and who needs to use it and how. Like that all feeds into what kind of control scheme you need to build out for this sort of stuff.
Yeah. So we're coming into the end of the show, Kyle. We got maybe like we got like a couple more minutes. I want to try. We've never tried this before. I'm springing this on you. This is a new segment. It's going to be a lightning round. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a question, and then we each have like one word that we can use to answer it.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, because I get wordy, I know.
Or like one concept. I'll give you one concept.
Yep.
It's like
Perfect.
It's like we're playing categories here. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So, question number 1. What plugin do you recommend for character animation?
Duick.
Okay, I was going to say Duick also. So we matched. Neither of us get a point. Because that's how categories work. But also Rubber Hose, but also Limber. All right. Yep. Is there any tutorial for diverging paths? This channel.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yes, nailed it. Yeah, it's a one-word answer, Kyle. We're in the lightning round. Nick Medina 33 asks, can you do dope text liquid animation at EC Abrams? Yes.
Here, can I'll give a quick answer. It's more than one word, but fast blur or fast box blur now plus levels on the alpha channel.
Okay.
Great way to get that goopy look between things.
Right, and then if you just start using the text animating tools, it looks really liquidy in there. That's a good one. I won't penalize you for that one.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then here we go. What's the fastest way to do subtitles in Premiere or After Effects? Premiere. Yeah. Premiere, samesies. And yeah, that pretty much brings us in to the end of the show. Oh, I feel like we really completed a lot of good things here at the end. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and hanging out with us here. At the end of the show, all 76 people here. So many, you love to see people come and hang out with us. Be standing room only if we were doing this at the local community college. I'm, of course, Evan Abrams, person you see on this channel the most, here with Kyle Hamrick. I want to thank you most of all for spending your time.
I want to thank myself most of all also.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I want to thank me for being here, for coming out. But no, this is great. This is fantastic. We'll be doing this, every Friday until they shut us down. We'll get into more questions when we can. Like we said, use the form. Link in the description of that form to give us those questions. We can get you up at the start of the show. It is starting to fill up with a lot of things, so we might be getting into more than one of them at the start of the show. Maybe we have to be litigious because they're a rare commodity to have in that form right now. But it's filling up with more good stuff. So I love it when that is filling up. And
plus, we're going to try to have some more guests in the coming weeks.
Some more guests.
Things have gotten a little off track just with current events, but we'll definitely have some more guests coming up here.
Well, we originally tried to plan around your travel dates and stuff,
right? And those all just evaporated.
Yeah, so now we're doing this, which is great. And someone was saying, I think it was Action Movie Dad out there who was like, you got to see Kyle live, right? Like, well, you can see him live right here. This is live. This is as live as
live-ish,
right? They can't they can't smell and or taste what's going on. But
that's the full experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my phone is buzzing, so that means it's the end of the show. Thank you all so much for coming out. If you enjoy this thing, like, subscribe, share with your friends, put it on in the background when you do other things, and hopefully we see you all next time. Take care of yourself, be safe out there, and we'll see you around the internet. Type.
And